everyone. We are going to talk a little bit today about something exciting, new Q drops, where they're leaking some disclosure of some of the hidden technologies, specifically Project Looking Glass. We'll talk about what that is and why it's important. A little bit more about the impeachment, which the public hearings began today. And lastly, some stuff about Epstein, of course. So thanks for joining us. It's so fun to have Q back. We've been waiting.
It is.
It's like,
how long's it been? Like 90 days, I think, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And they're back just like as if nothing happened. There's no like, hey, we're back. We're still here. You didn't lose us. It's just, next piece of data coming on out. So the part that caught my eye was the talking about Project Looking Glass. So they're beginning to disclose secret technologies, and that's the most exciting part for me. Of course, there's still going to be a lot of focus on the politics because that's still an important part of it. That's still what's going on. Although they did say indictments are going to be starting coming out 2019, so by the end of this year. That stuff is rolling along. That's good. So Project Looking Glass, you looked into that a little bit. What did you find?
Well, I got given a little video. It's only a small piece of a longer interview, which is 2.5 hours long, of an ex-Navy SEAL who is able to tell us a certain amount, which is kind of amazing anyway, that he is able to do that. But you can see when he's being careful when he can't tell you everything. But in this little snippet, I'll give you the snippet as well as the full-length video if you've got a spare 2.5 hours to watch, because there's probably fascinating things in there. But he was involved in these secret programs, the black programs that have been explained to us before. And he seems to be quite psychic. So he was, I'm assuming, unless he was just one of the assistants working with a psychic. But Looking Glass is like a round thing. I'll put up a diagram here with 3 lights that go over the top of it. There's a barrel in the middle, which I think is water. And there's a chair, which is where the psychic sits, because you've got to have somebody with extremely high vibration to use it. And they must be able to clear out all their thoughts and emotions while they do this, like a remote viewer, or basically like any psychic. They should be able to remove all of their own thoughts and beliefs and things that might taint the information, so that they can look into the Looking Glass, which gives you a variety of the timeline options that are available in front of you, and even things that have happened in the past. And it doesn't alter those things, but of course, if you have information going forward that there's a 53.5% chance that this is going to happen, then you can, if you've got unlimited amounts of money, which of course they've found ways to do, draw in massive amounts of money, which is what the Pentagon was trying to investigate at the time the missile hit it during 9/11, which they then said was a plane, but there was no plane. All the trillions of dollars that disappeared. If you've got that kind of money that you can play with, then you can send out people to go and do stuff to bend towards the timeline that you want. Now, that's been going on. This guy had been involved in it since in the 1990s. 95, I think, is when he started doing that. And then he was chucked out or something in 2001. I have to watch the whole thing through to get the full story. But in that time, he was saying that his job was to get it down to 2 main timelines that the world was heading towards. Because at 2012, there would be the converging of timelines. Now, we've heard this from loads of different spiritual people, that the options of how the world can play out is reducing down, and we have these mergings happen. We can talk about that a bit afterwards, how you feel it, how it changes. You think you put your keys down there and they're not there when you look 5 minutes later. Things, these timelines merge together, so there will be lots of glips, I think, in what you think is the timeline. And as they come down, these 2 main ones that he was in charge of creating and manipulating towards was one. He said timeline 1, which is what seemed to be guaranteed, basically the highest probability, which is the awakening. Mm-hmm. The awakening, where people will suddenly, there will be an event. After all this, another confirmation, there will be an event that wakes everybody up. They can suddenly see the truth. Their own psychic abilities grow. You cannot lie to them. You cannot try to manipulate them. You can't have the media telling you, look over here, while something over here is happening that they've forgotten to mention. All of that will go. Everyone will see through it immediately. And the other timeline, which was called Timeline 2, he thought that was kind of funny. He'd think that they would try and make that the number one, but it was Timeline 2, was a major catastrophe over the world that would drive everybody underground and just a few people left on the surface to try and survive. But he said it just can't happen now. Once we pass the 2012, there is only one timeline, and it is a happy ending. It is the awakening. You can't get around it. So this was done in 2011, 7 years ago, and now we're looking at these very latest Q drops that mention the Looking Glass project, which is what that was about, and finding that they're mentioning Looking Glass and that it says we have it all and there's guaranteed, we're all going to be fine. It really looks like whoever is running Q has access to the Looking Glass project and can see.
Yes. And which is why they say future proves past, right? So my understanding of it is that it was reverse engineered from some alien technology, and it's part of the Montauk project thing. So it can be very old. And it's not, by the way, it's not a time travel device. It's very much like remote viewing. It just enables you to remote view into the future. And that's why Q can state various things, and then we'll come out, we'll get to that date, and it's like, oh, they put this date here then, and how did they know? How could they know exactly the day that McCain died, or, or Bush Sr., whatever? How could they know all that stuff? Well, now we know how they know it. And the fact that it's out, so many people know it, and whenever something comes out through Q, you got the Anons out there researching like crazy. This is the beginning of all these secret hidden technologies coming out. This is where it gets exciting.
It is. It's very exciting. We'll see where it takes us. Because if they're just using technology, it also removes some of the mystery that, you get lots of people going, oh, well, it's all aliens. Oh, Q's only, like Majestic 12, it's half aliens and half human. And people are going, well, we've never ever seen them that we know of, and some people talk about it, and it's just all so vague. But if we know for sure that there are these technologies, and okay, maybe they were reverse engineered off a UFO. That's another thing this guy talks about, this ex-Navy SEAL. He's talking about how he was around Area 51, that's basically where the Space Force is. So all these supposed UFOs that we see going in the air, UFO means unidentified flying object, they're basically all part of the space program. They're not unidentified at all. They're just part of this force that they haven't told us about. And the interviewer said, well, why haven't they told us about this? Why can't they just let us out? He said, because then there'd be too many questions about what's fueling them, why don't they need any fuel, and why the hell are we spending all this stupid money on fossil fuels and petroleum-based products when we've got this technology that's been there for friggin' decades that requires no fossil fuels, and we don't need rocket-propelled anything, that we can jump in a craft and go to Mars in less than a day.
That's right. There was some general some time ago who said, everything you can dream of, we can already do, right? That's one of the reasons it's hard to talk to people about climate change, the people who are bought into the carbon footprint thing, because, you can say, well, these other things don't work, and this is, in just a few years, it's all going to go away anyway. We'll have these other technologies. We won't need those fuels anymore. This won't be happening. It's all so contrived and silly. But how can I say this to family members, for instance, who are, we have to get the carbon footprint. We have to get part of this program. And Trump is really awful. He doesn't care about the environment. But yeah. About that.
No. And I still have people on my Facebook as well that are still putting up anti-Trump, real nasty hatred stuff. There's no point in trying to convince them otherwise. They are so set in their little way. They might convert later on, or they might struggle and die. Some people will not be able to handle the change particularly if they have thrown everything they've got and base their reputation on their expertise. they will struggle the hardest in accepting all the new information. So I've given up trying to convince them. I might drop a little thing every now and then. Like yesterday, someone put up a thing, because the fires here in Australia have grown bigger and bigger and bigger. There's more than 100 fires here now, and yet not one person seems to have asked the question, who lit the fires? They keep saying, "Oh, this is all about climate change." I'm like, well, no. We've been fighting fires in Australia for, we've had the Aborigines working on it here for 60,000 years. We've had fires for a very long time. It's got nothing to do with climate change. So who is lighting more than 100 fires? Why are we not asking that question?
Not part of the story.
Exactly. Somebody put out, oh, it's all about, carbon dioxide. We've got to reduce the carbon dioxide. And I immediately just put in a link, like we've done in these episodes before, link to the gardener's site that says, hey, if you want your plants to grow more, you actually need to bump it up to about 4 times what the carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere, and then your plants will really flourish.
Well, the other thing that has a whole lot of hush-hush about it is the Epstein stories, where 60 Minutes in Australia, I watched recently, and you watched it as well. They were talking about his victims. They mostly talked about Prince Andrew, but majority of the pictures, other than Prince Andrew, were all of Trump. And though they didn't say and Trump, they said and his rich friends. They didn't ever say Clinton. They didn't show a picture of Clinton.
Oh, just one. Yeah. But yeah, probably 5 or 6 of the same photos of Trump.
Over and over. Yeah, so they're still there. They're still locked into the never Trumping. And we are in the middle of this impeachment. Boy, it was hard. I watched as much as I could make myself watch. Speeding it up, putting it at 1.5 times the speed to try to get it going through. They've got something. I mean, I think that there was probably a quid pro quo going on, and that everybody sort of knew about it. They don't have evidence to it other than hearsay and people saying, well, we knew that's really what it was, even though we don't have evidence. So I don't know how that works. And my understanding is that that's kind of the way it always works. Generally speaking, our aid is usually based on, okay, if you do this, you need to get the whole Ukraine thing was about getting rid of the corruption, and they had the new president. So it's the way it works.
But haven't we seen a video already of Joe Biden actually boasting about the fact that to stop the investigation into his son, he was the one who would withhold the money, the funding?
Yep. Well, you know their argument. It's that he wasn't doing it for his own political purposes. He was doing it because it was part of the policy, because that particular guy was so corrupt. And other people say, no, that's just a backstory. Wasn't that corrupt? That everybody was kind of corrupt. Ukraine evidently is pretty corrupt.